South Republican front-runner Ben Carson has never been a big fan of the press, and now he's got even more reason to dislike the media. Reporters are digging into Carson's inspiring life story and discovering that some of it may be too good to be true. Adam has more.
When telling his personal story, Ben Carson has long claimed he was offered a scholarship to West Point, but turned it down. Last month, Carson repeated that claim to Charlie Rose.
I was offered a full scholarship to West Point, got to meet General Westmoreland, go to Congressional Medal of Honor dinners, but decided really my pathway would be medicine.
But West Point tells Politico there's no record of Carson applying there, let alone being admitted. A Carson spokesman now says he was told he could get into the military academy, but took a pass. Also getting scrutiny, Carson's claim that he found God after a violent youth in which he once tried to stab someone named Bob.
Had it not been for a belt buckle under their clothing, they would have been killed or seriously injured.
But CNN says it can't find Bob or anyone else who backs Carson's depiction of his early years.
That was not his demeanor around here.
Now Carson is attacking the press.
This is a bunch of lies. This is what it is. It's a bunch of lies.
And standing by his story.
It was a close relative in my family. I really don't want to get into the details.
But at this point, Carson may not have a choice.
You know, Adam, one of the things that surprises me, because he certainly has played this game very well, is that Ben Carson is annoyed and surprised himself that the media is digging into this. And anything, as we all know, that has to do with job history, education, salary, the media is going to find out. And the fact that he would perpetuate this myth is shocking.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a function of the fact that he's never held elected office and doesn't really know what it means to be in politics. So this is coming as a shock to his system. But yeah, of course they're going to do this. I mean, this has happened with every candidate. Todd Domke, the Republican analyst, tweeted out today a reminder that the media had looked at Hillary Clinton's claim that she dodged sniper fire in Bosnia and found that it didn't hold up. As they should have. Our old colleague at the Boston Phoenix, David Bernstein, dug into the idea that Mitt Romney's father had marched with Martin Luther King and found out that George Romney had a great record on civil rights, but that was a fabricated tale. So we should do this. I don't really understand why he thinks we wouldn't.
Well, I think he's surprised. You know, he has been such a strange figure in this campaign, and he's skated along, and then all of a sudden he leaped up in the polls and he starts leading polls. Well, that's the signal. It's like the whistle. All the media is going to come and start to question. I think you can go along under the radar and say things and people brush you off. Once you actually start looking like a viable candidate, it's fair game. Everything's fair game.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I think that these two discrepancies that were reported this week are both pretty thin. I don't think that they are bad journalism or anything like that, but I think that the Carson's statement that he wasn't actually offered a scholarship, but he had a conversation with General Westmoreland when he was the top ROTC student in the state of Michigan that said, I can totally imagine that he was told, if you want to go to West Point, we can make that happen. I think it's a reasonable story, but it's a little bit thin.
Except that there are no scholarships to West
everybody
Point.
gets a full ride.
But it's the kind of thing that I can totally imagine happening 40 years ago, and now it's sort of drifting. To me, it's a relatively minor thing. What wasn't mentioned was the strange dispute about pyramids that has happened this week, where he has very strongly argued that the pyramids were not for the burial of pharaohs, but for the storage of grain because of a story in the Bible. I think what we're going to see is Ben Carson now, because he's in the lead, is going to get a lot more attention, and part of it's going to be his history, but also the pretty crazy things that he believes. He has a real weakness for conspiracy theories, and I think that we're seeing that exposure now that he's in the lead, and I don't think he's going to hold up well to it.
He's also said some incredibly offensive things that a lot of people are upset with, but his base supporters have no problem with it whatsoever. He said that a Muslim should not be president. He has said that the Jews in Germany were partly responsible for the Holocaust because they let the Nazis take their guns away.
You claim Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, is a eugenicist?
Yeah, exactly.
Victims of mass shootings should fight back, and if they don't, they're maybe to blame.
So it's interesting. So it's interesting that people find these personal fabrications, if that's what they turn out to be so much more important than these truly strange things that he's been saying. But by the way, to Josh's point about this latest West Point story, the reporting is also showing that there is some proof that General Westmoreland was elsewhere on the day in question. I mean, there really isn't any proof that Carson and Westmoreland got together either. Unfortunately, General Westmoreland cannot be reached for comment at this point, but so this may
But
never be resolved.
Also, to Josh's point, that pyramid story was gaining traction this morning. I mean, everybody was running around with that. He's saying that Joseph put grain, in the pyramids, but that one stopped elevating as soon as the fabrication story came out.
Although his supporters seem to really stick by him. I mean, he's got a limit, and he will always have a limit. And I don't think new people are going to come to him in droves with all these questions. But it's very strange. It's a conundrum of this race that so many people are sticking by him, despite, just like Donald Trump, despite all kinds of outrageous things being said.
Well, in a way, I think that's because of his appeal to evangelicals, and that's why I actually disagree that the stabbing anecdote doesn't really matter that much. I mean, I take your point about these weird, tinfoil hat type ideas he has, but he's called that his road to Damascus moment. He tries to stab, maybe it was a friend, maybe it was a relative, maybe it was something else, tries to stab this guy, hits the belt buckle instead, the knife breaks, and he gets religion and leaves his anger aside. But I mean,
the fact
that's
that CNN can't find that guy in a few weeks
That's
doesn't
true.
necessarily mean it's not true.
But what I'm saying is that's why I think this matters a lot, is because that's his road to Damascus
say who
moment,
it
as he
is.
puts it. It's central
Just-
to who he
yeah.
is and the identity that makes this core of people stand by him.